My name is Susan Steele, and welcome to Artbeat. Tonight, we'll be visiting the home of Harriet Ermentrout, a watercolorist, and she lives in Newtown, Pennsylvania. And then we'll travel to the studio of Dwinell Grant, the 1988 Central Bucks Chamber of Commerce Art Award winner. But first, to Harriet's. Inside Mrs. Ermentrout's lovely home here in Newtown, Pennsylvania. Hi, Harriet.
Hello, Susan.
It's nice to be here tonight.
Oh, I'm glad you could come.
You are a watercolorist, am I right?
That's right.
But you were a designer before that?
Well, interior decorating. I took a little bit of study of that.
Well, it surely shows here. And you have a collection of all types of things.
Well, I was in the antique business. And of course, I saved a lot of things.
Well, this tin collection is really unusual. There's so many pieces. Would you tell us about some of your favorite pieces?
Oh, I'd love to. The piece up in the corner is an old rain conductor. We found that up in the attic. That had originally been on the corner of the house, and you can see where the rain spout would come down. And it has a pineapple on the front. That's for hospitality, and the date of 1836.
Did most houses have tin rain spouts like that?
I don't know. I imagine a lot of them did. And you can see where the tapes are on the side where they were nailed to each side of the house. And then another interesting piece, I think, is the old kettle, lunch kettle, that someone to put his own name on the front, on the brass. And then that's a bee smoker.
Oh, yes. They still use
I
those,
used to sell those in my antique shop. People would say, "What would you do with that?" And I said, "Well, I just opened that little spout, stick some greens in, and that sold them the idea, something to use." And then the little perforated tin thing above that, I've had a lot of fun with that because no one can guess what it is.
It looks like
Have you any idea?
Could it be a bracelet?
No. No, the one with the little holes in, and it has three little legs.
Oh, with the legs. All right,
like
is it a trivet?
No, but it was used in an ice cream parlor. When you would go in and say, "I want 5 ice cream cones," you know, where do they put them while they fill up the others? And that was used for that. And then up above that is a strainer, and to this side of it is a milk skimmer that the farmers used. And these are old candle makers.
I recognize those.
And a lot more funnels and your tin cookie cutters.
I see George Washington
molds. That's a candy mold, ice cream mold.
What's in the heart is a mold also?
That's a mold also, yes.
The tongs, what are those?
They were for cooking, and that center one was used for lowering hot jars out of big pots for canning. And then that other's a scoop and cutters, and they're all graters.
Yes.
And tea caddies. And
apple, are those apple slicers?
Yes, or cabbage cutters, they call them.
What's the star?
That was for a Christmas tree.
Oh.
Someone had electrified it and put a bulb in it. Originally it was without the bulb. And then there are trays underneath, and some tin ABC plates up this direction. Apple cores.
Boy, this is a lot to take care of, but it's lovely. It looks beautiful.
I don't take care of it.
Oh,
I just
that's the secret.
Just collect on it, and that's what makes it look nice.
Looking in this beautiful room, did you do a lot of work to this house?
Yes, we did. It had been made into 2 apartments, and we put it back into a one-family house.
It's built
in 1836.
Do you know who the owner was when it was built?
Yes, Aaron Ridge was the original owner, and it has been owned by about 5 others, I believe.
That's not very many,
We don't know what Aaron Ridge did. We couldn't find out what his occupation was, but a milkman owned it at one time, and a groceryman owned it at another time, but we really don't know what Aaron Ridge's business was.
Now, you said that you had an antique shop. Was it here in Newtown?
Yes, right in Newtown, right on State Street, across from the movie.
This piece back here, could you tell us about that?
That's a pewter cupboard, and I remember when I bought that and brought it home, my husband said, "Oh dear, what are you going to do with that? It's horrible looking." It was terrible, and I had it refinished, and it turned out to be one of my favorite pieces.
What period of time would that come from?
That's early American.
That's a beautiful piece.
And this is another one I bought at an auction in Newtown. And this also came from an auction in Newtown. many years ago.
Are these both hutches? Is that what you call them?
Hutches, yes.
And what period would you say they are?
About 1830, 1825, somewhere around there.
Harriet, is this piece a pie safe?
Yes, Susan, it is. And we especially love it because it came from my husband's grandmother, lived in Reading. And it hung in the cellar, and that's why the holes are in the top parts of it. So the rats couldn't get into it.
Yes.
These are called hog scrapers.
The candles holders?
Because they were copied from the scrapers that they used from the hogs to scrape off the...
Well, Harriet, let's go up and visit you in your studio.
All right, I'd love to show it to you. I'd love to show it to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Harriet, it's so much fun to look at your sketchbooks. It's like reading someone's letters. Do you take these sketchbooks every time you travel?
Every place we go. I usually fill one each country or each visit.
Oh, they're fascinating. This one is from...
From England.
From England.
That was our trip in 87.
1987. How I've been to some of these places. It's so much fun seeing your interpretation of them. But tell me about this one about Queen Elizabeth.
Well, this was the day that Charles, my husband, went to Wimbledon. I had a very bad cold, and of course the first week of Wimbledon was very rainy.
Yes.
And I decided not to go, so I turned on the television, and I was so thrilled. There was the opening of Parliament. So of course I had to do these very quickly. That's the Queen with her glasses on,
yes,
reading the Charter, and that is Margaret Thatcher's hat. I could only see the top of her because she was standing in amongst all the other celebrities.
And back here,
and this is Lord Chancellor, and he was interviewed before they put his gown and wig on, and they asked him if he was nervous, and he says, "I'm very nervous." And they said, "Well, why? You've done this before." He said, "This is the first time I've ever had to walk backwards in front of the Queen and down those steps."
Well, how long does it take for you to do a sketch, usually?
Well, I often do them sitting in restaurants, and this was out on a terrace of where we stayed, a bed and breakfast place in England that we just loved. And I've done a large painting from this. Well, the length of time is hard to say. If it's something that I'm familiar with, maybe I'll work on it a half an hour. Often go back to the hotel or the bed and breakfast place and put the color in.
Yes, I was
Sometimes
just
I'll have the
you.
color with me. I have a little miniature set that I'll use. And
do you always use these to go from to do a larger painting?
very often. Sometimes these never get enlarged, but often I do.
But your ideas
Yes,
are here.
yes.
And I noticed that you put the name of where you
Where
were
I've
and
been,
the date.
and I can often recommend to people a good restaurant to go to
Yes.
because I sat there and sketched.
Right, right. Do you have a sketch you could show us that you have done a painting from?
Yes, well, this one right here. This was done, I guess a couple of years ago, 1977, quite a few years ago. I was having coffee with a friend of mine and went outside to get in my car and leave, and I looked down the street and here was this perfect pink house at the edge of the railroad track. So I went home and got my sketchbook, went back and made sketches. Now these are just line sketches, and then I made a value sketch to determine whether I was going to have it like a night painting or a morning painting. And this if you want to see the painting,
Yes,
it's
I'd
right
like
here.
to.
This is down the end of the railroad tracks with all the signals, and I gave it a night feeling.
Oh, that is a beautiful pink.
And
Where is this house?
this is right in Newtown.
Do you often use scenes from Bucks
Oh
County?
yes, I could paint here for the rest of my life, out of my studio window or out back or down the street or. But it's great having the sketches because then I can always refer to them. I may go back and do another painting of the same spot sometime in a different version, maybe a bright afternoon or a sunny day.
Where did you get your training?
Well, I first started at Moore Institute, studied interior decorating. And then I just started taking lessons from different watercolors, like John Pike I studied under for quite a few years. And then I studied under Roy Noose, who was at the Academy of Fine Arts, studied portrait work under him.
So you basically do portraits and watercolors?
Well, I don't do portraits just of maybe of my family. I promised my husband I wouldn't do portraits for anyone else. You have to please everyone doing portraits.
Right, yes.
And then I studied under, I go on workshops about twice a year. I'm going to one in June on Portugal, and then I'm going up to Cape Cod on another workshop in August.
You go to special places to paint. You do a lot of New England scenes.
Yes.
Bermuda.
Bermuda, and yes, I was showing your husband tonight some paintings I did in Bermuda.
Yes.
Because I hear you might go there.
Yes, yes, we'd very much like to. Do you ever do anything other than watercolor?
Pen and ink sketches. Well, most of my sketches in my sketchbooks are all done in ink. I don't know, I think you sort of discipline you more when you use ink. And, well, now that's a pencil one. These were pencil ones, but all these are in ink. And then I just add color to them later on.
We're going to show our audience your studio.
Oh, I'd love you to see it.
Harriet, it's nice to be here in your studio. It's a lovely place to work. Do you come up here daily?
Well, I try to make rules that I'll get up here every morning at 9, but I don't. I have interruptions, but I sort of work in spurts. Sometimes all day, a couple days in a row, and then
or when
some
you're going to
other
have
things.
a show, I suppose.
Right,
it's
right.
This is a recent sketch that you're showing me here.
Yes, this is the preliminary sketch I made for this larger painting over here.
What inspired you to do this?
Well, people say, why don't you do some of your antiques? You're always doing houses and landscapes, and so I decided I'd bring up an old jug, and of course the baskets aren't terribly old, but the old coverlet is old.
Yes.
And so I decided, and I think I'll do some more like this. It's sort of fun. I have so many antiques, it'll be fun to do.
This turned out so well. Are those
Thank you.
geraniums?
No,
Or begonias?
I knew you were going to ask me begonias.
Begonias. Yeah, the color is lovely. Are you going to enter this into a show?
I hope to, yes.
You have some things at Anita
Yes,
Ronaldo.
and Anita's going to have another show of just flowers, so I'll probably put this in that show.
Yes. And I think you're going to have some things at the Aldi Mansion that we're going to
Yes, I'm going to have about 7 paintings there.
Good. We'll be sure
So,
to look at
well,
those when we go.
Good.
Do you ever do commissions, or do you do only work that you have decided to do?
Well, I do a lot of commissions of old farmhouses, people that are moving into smaller quarters, and they want their homestead done. I do a great many of those. And I like doing it, except if the house is modern or a ranch house or something like that.
Right, then it's a little
Then
hard.
I may make an excuse.
Think of a reason
Right.
to do it, yes. Who is this gentleman on the wall over here?
Oh, that's Roy Noose, and I studied under him for about, I guess maybe 5 to 8 years doing portrait work and oil paintings. He taught at the Academy for about 35 years.
The Academy of Arts in Philadelphia?
In Philadelphia, and then he retired, and he lived in Rushland, and I lived near him.
Oh.
And he was,
So
he
he's a
was a
Bucks County.
great teacher. And one day, 2 weeks in a row, our model didn't show up, so he said, well, I'll sit for you girls.
Oh, that was nice.
And he was a great model.
Is he still alive?
No, he's not. No, he's been dead for quite a few years. But he was an excellent teacher.
Did he teach watercolors?
He taught, no, just oil and pastels.
That's a pastel.
And I had never done watercolors when I was with him. I didn't do watercolors until after I left
he'd be
him.
pleased.
And watercolors are so great to travel
Yes, and that's
with.
your...
And easier to clean up.
I've seen your little miniature case. Well, I really want to thank you for letting us come to your home tonight.
I've enjoyed it.
And we wish you the best of luck, and we'll all be looking for your work in the shows.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed seeing all the technique of taking pictures like this.
Yes,
It's
it
been
has
fun.
been interesting.
Artbeat would like to hear from our viewers. Drop us a line and let us know what you think about the show. Send your letters to Suburban Community Television, 4145 Swamp Road, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, 18901. Be sure to include your name, telephone number, and the name of your cable system. That's Suburban Community Television, 4145 Swamp Road, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, 18901.
The 1988 Bucks County Arts Award will be presented to Mr. Dwinell Grant. He is a Bucks County artist whose professional standing is distinguished in his field and whose body of work and lifetime accomplishments are recognized beyond the county and nationally. We're in the Soulbury studio of Dwinell Grant, the winner of the 1988 Arts Award for the Central Bucks Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Grant, this art award is a very prestigious award for Bucks County.
Yes,
How do you see yourself, primarily as what type of an artist?
painter.
A painter of what type?
Well, abstract painter, I guess. Yes.
And this award also is honoring you for film animation, I believe.
Yes, that's true. But I think I've been an abstract painter much longer than I've been a filmmaker. And I think my heart was always in painting.
Well, it's nice to see the canvases here in your studio. But tell me, how did you begin your career in art?
Well, I was supposed to have a bad heart, so I couldn't engage in any sports. So my grandfather took pity on me when I was 11 years old and taught me painting. And so that I would have at least some kind of peer standing in the, you know. And so I first started painting landscapes and portraits and so on.
And then did you go to school for art?
Yes, first I went, I took a pre-medics course, but then there came the Great Depression and I couldn't afford medical school, so I went to art school instead. And I went to Dayton Art Institute and then up to New York to the National Academy of Design. Then I went back to Wittenberg and Springfield, Ohio to teach art and dramatics.
Mr. Grant, what do you feel is the major message in your work?
Well, when I'm doing abstract painting especially, I'm trying to broaden people's horizons and show them things that they have never seen before. Just as if you pulled somebody out of a rainforest and transplanted them to the Sahara Desert, you know. They'd be dismayed at first, but they might find something beautiful there. And I'm not saying that the paintings are a desert necessarily, but nevertheless, that's the basic idea, is to try and show something to broaden people's outlook, and aesthetic outlook. And it also has a certain relation to music, I think, because I don't think people expect music to tell a specific story or to describe a particular place or anything like that. It's something you enjoy on an entirely different level. And I think that if we are going to talk about pictures, I should mention the reason that I had for switching to the abstract back in about 1935 and 38, around in there. And that was that I got interested in archaeology and the very earliest forms of communication between humans. And at about the same time, I took a course in Gestalt psychology. And it had three main points that meant a great deal to me. One of them was that the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. The second one was that every part loses some of its individuality by becoming part of a whole. And the third one was that everything has the ability to close up gaps and create a continuity even if it isn't there. And with those things in mind, I suddenly realized that abstraction was a great way to paint, that I could do more, I could play more. And this suited me because all my life I've been most interested in playing and solving problems. And each new painting is a new problem to solve. Each surface is something, it's a challenging something or other that I have to somehow overcome, you know, and get right. And I can't do that in a landscape because I'm dictated to by the landscape I'm copying, or a portrait, because that also dictates to me what, exactly what the nose must look like and so forth. But with these paintings, any part I can twist around and change the color of and so forth and make them fit the total composition, which is the important thing to me. And as a result, the paintings all look different.
Mr. Grant, I'm particularly fascinated with the animation films that you did. How did you get involved with that?
In the film work, animation. Well, I was teaching in a Midwestern college, and I was also directing acting. And I designed a stage set for one of the plays that we put on there, and it was a completely abstract setting, and the lighting was all controlled by dimmers, and we got all kinds of wonderful effects that way. And I thought, gee, if I could only add some motion to that, we'd really have something. So I bought a camera and put my first film on film. And it pleased me very much, so I did about 5 or 6 more.
Did you share these early films with people?
Oh, I tried to, but nobody would look at them. Oh, no, absolutely nobody.
But that was early. What period of time are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about 1940. Yes, so, you know, I guess 2 years later, when I went to the Guggenheim to work, Hillary Bay was interested in them. Couldn't get the Museum of Modern Art interested at all, and so it was a struggle to get some interest until about 1970, somewhere around in there, when Anthology Film Archives in New York heard about them and sent a researcher out and immediately collected the originals, and they're now in vaults. So.
Now, you did other films after that 1940 series.
Oh yes, during the World War II, of course, which was the 40s, as you know, I worked for a film company that was making Navy training films. And so I spent the whole war making Navy training films. And then after that, a friend of mine and I started a company, Sturgis Grant Productions, to make medical teaching films. And we must have made, I wrote and animated well over 200 of them. And so.
So those were animated films, even though they were teaching?
Yes, oh yes, because there are many things in medicine and in some of the other sciences too that you can't see. So, you know, what's going on in the body. So I had to animate it so that for watching the film was happening. And
well then, after the original series, did you then do some more art animation films?
Well, I didn't do any more art animation films until about fairly recently. Just 7 years ago I started the most recent one. It took me 7 years to do. And that was kind of a tough one.
Well, I understand in France recently,
yes.
You've had, they had a retrospective of your animated films.
Yes. Well, that was all those that I did in 1940, the first 5 of them, and then this latest one they added on.
That must have pleased you greatly.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
I understand that on your recent animated film, you also did the music.
Well, I had thought I could put some music from records that didn't have copyrights on them. You know, I wanted some computer music, and I wanted some progressive jazz and so forth. And then I found out that these were all copyrighted, whether it said they were or not. Even Happy Birthday is copyrighted now, you know. It was written about 1880 or something, but if you sing it in a restaurant, they have to pay a royalty. And so they do. And so I just decided to sit down at a computer keyboard and learn how to use it. And it took me about 2 months. And then I projected the film, and while I was watching the film, I simply played the music, that's all.
Have you had any comments about your musical ability?
Yes, one student at Bucks County Community College suggested that somebody should teach me to stay on key. But the trouble was that this was all done to a pentatonic scale, and there is no such thing as key in this scale. So it didn't mean anything to me, really.
So you found then that the keyboard went well with what you had done in animation?
Yes, it did. It went, nobody else has complained about it at all, and a lot of people think it fits quite well.
And that's where necessity made you learn to do the keyboard.
Right. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
When people look at your work, what are you hoping that they'll see?
Well, I hope that they'll get some sort of a reaction. I don't care whether they're upset or angered or happy or what, just so they get some sort of a reaction to it that they might not have had before.
I want to thank you, Mr. Grant, for this interview and for what you've done for the people of Bucks County.
I hope I've done a little something, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sure you have. That's all for this edition of Art Beat. I'm Susan Steele. Good night.
On the next edition of Art Beat, meet printmaker Anita Grunendahl. See a tour of her art gallery and learn about the fine art of printmaking.
And put it down here, lower the screen on the paper, and using two hands, pull it firmly across the screen, lift my ink, carry it back for the next pass.
And coming in August, Art Beat takes a special look at internationally renowned woodworker George Nakashima. Don't miss all that's coming your way on future editions of Art Beat.